All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're taking a closer look at The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a book that honestly has been a game changer for millions. But we're not just going to list the habits. Nope, we're going to get into the deep down principles that make this whole thing work, starting with the real foundation of how we change. So, let's start with something we've probably all felt. You get super excited about a new productivity hack or a new plan, you dive in, and for a few weeks, you're on fire. But then it just kind of fizzles out. It's this frustrating cycle, right? It feels like we're just slapping a Band-Aid on a problem that's way deeper. And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? What gives? Why does so many of these plans and courses that promise the world end up falling flat, leaving us pretty much right back where we started? Well, the author, Stephen Covey, had a really interesting take on this. He said our whole culture kind of shifted. We went from focusing on what he calls the character ethic, building a solid foundation of things like integrity and courage, to something called the personality ethic. This new way is all about your public image, quick fix techniques, and just having a positive attitude. Basically, it's all about treating the symptoms, not the actual problem. And this quote from Einstein just hits the nail on the head. If you want real, lasting change, you can't just mess around with your behaviors on the surface. You've got to go deeper. You need a totally new way of thinking, a whole new level of understanding. So, if we need a new way of thinking, where on earth do we start? Covey's answer is what he calls the inside-out approach. The idea is that true change doesn't start with your job or your relationships. It starts deep inside you, with your character, your motivations, and your own personal view of the world. Okay, so what in the world is a paradigm? It sounds like a complex word, but the best way to think about it is like a map. A map of a city isn't the city itself, right? It's just a representation that helps you get around. Well, our paradigms are the mental maps we use to make sense of everything. They shape our attitudes and our actions, and half the time, we don't even know we're using them. And here's the absolute key to all of this. If you want different results in your life, just changing what you do isn't going to cut it. You have to go deeper and actually change the maps you're using to see the world in the first place. This brings us perfectly to the very first, and maybe the most fundamental habit of them all. Be proactive. This is where we learn how to truly take the driver's seat in our own lives. So many of us, without even thinking about it, operate on this reactive model. Something happens, that's the stimulus, and boom, we have an immediate, almost automatic response. It's like we're programmed by our circumstances, just reacting based on feelings or old habits. But here is the profound, game-changing difference for us as human beings. In that little space between the stimulus and the response, that's where our greatest power lies. It's our freedom to choose. As the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl discovered, even in a concentration camp, nobody can take away your power to choose how you respond. So being proactive is way more than just taking initiative. It's this fundamental acceptance that we are responsible for our own lives. Our behavior comes from our decisions, based on our values, not just from what's happening around us. And this is a brilliant way to think about where to put your energy. We all have this huge circle of concern, full of things we worry about: the economy, politics, other people's choices. But proactive people, they focus their energy on their smaller circle of influence, the things they can actually do something about. And the cool part is, when they do that, that circle starts to get bigger. But hey, being proactive is just step one. The 7 habits aren't just a random to-do list. They actually map out a whole journey of growth. Covey calls it the maturity continuum. And this framework shows the whole path. We all start out in a state of dependence, relying on others. The first 3 habits are all about getting to independence. That's the private victory of mastering yourself. But it doesn't end there. The next 3 habits guide us to interdependence, the public victory, where we realize that working together, we can achieve so much more than we ever could alone. So the path is totally logical. First, you have to win that private victory with habits 1, 2, and 3. Think about it. You can't have great relationships or lead a team if you haven't mastered yourself. Only then can you move on to the public victory, achieving real success with other people through habits 4, 5, and 6. And habit 7, that's what keeps the whole cycle going, through constant renewal. Now, underneath all of these habits, there's one simple, timeless idea that governs all long-term success. And it's explained perfectly with that classic fable of the goose and the golden egg. You know the story, right? A poor farmer finds a goose that lays a solid gold egg every single day. He gets rich, but then he gets greedy. He kills the goose to get all the eggs at once, And of course, finds nothing inside. He completely destroyed the very thing that was producing his wealth. This story is the perfect way to understand the PPC balance principle. P stands for production. Those are the golden eggs, the results you want. And PC stands for production capability. That's the goose itself, the asset that actually creates those results. Real effectiveness is all about keeping those two in balance. If you focus only on the eggs, you eventually kill the goose. And this principle is literally everywhere. Just think about it. Your health is a goose. If you burn yourself out for short-term gains, it breaks down. Your most important relationships are a goose. If you only take from them and never invest in them, they fade. Your finances, your skills, they're all assets that you have to take care of. This P/PC balance is like a law of nature. So that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. When you look at the most important parts of your life, your health, your family, your career, ask yourself, honestly, are you taking care of the goose that lays the golden eggs? Or are you just so focused on grabbing the eggs that you're sacrificing your long-term well-being for short-term results? The answer to that question? Well, that's the real first step toward becoming truly effective.